Hi, good morning, guys. Justin from Southern Performance FL here in Orlando, Florida. And I'm sitting in front of a very special car to me. And I wanted to kind of give a little insight and kind of give a backstory about this car and why it means so much to me and kind of what it represents. And so to talk about this car, we have to talk about my startings of my company, Jordan Performance and Racing, all the way back in 2015. At that time, had a almost 7-year career in accounting and finance with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I've always loved cars. I've always loved building, working on cars, taking cars apart. And my dream and my goal was always to get out of the rat race, quit corporate America, and start my own shop. And so back then, we campaigned a white car that I called Snow White. That at the time was the fastest Gen 1 stock motor car in the world. It went 860 at 156 way back in 2015. Shortly after that, drive into a car meet, we got rear-ended and the car was totaled. And so that was a big letdown. I had some pretty big dreams and ambitions for that car, and complete loss. It effectively turned that white Mustang into basically a hatchback. The whole back of the car was smashed in. Not good. Ended up having 6 bulging discs, 4 herniated discs, messed my back up. It was a lot of bad things. And so, as I look back on it, and as God teaches me things and molds me into the man He wants me to be, that ultimately ended up being a blessing, because out of that tragedy, I met Mr. Edwin, who was the owner of this beautiful orange '69 Mustang. And so after the car accident, at the time I had not quit my job yet. I ultimately, as a result of the fame and notoriety that the white car received, it was the catalyst that ultimately let me make the decision to quit my accounting career and start my own business. And so I did. My wife and I joke, I had talked about it and thought about it for a while. And at the time we worked together, we both worked at Pricewaterhouse. And, I said, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job. What do you think? And like the amazing wife she is, she supported me full circle, no questions asked. She's like, yeah, whatever you think is best. I'd already had the 2-week notice queued up. And once she gave me the go-ahead, I got out of my desk. I walked into my supervisor at the time's office and put my paper down, and that was it. And so I quit my career, gave up my career as an accountant / finance guy, and went full tilt into starting my own business. And at the time, we had just bought our house in Riverview, and we bought that house because it had a detached garage. And so the goal and the vision was, hey, I've got a 2-bay detached garage from the shop. I can work on 2 cars at a time. With all the business that I had acquired and all the attention I got from the white car success, I had a ton of work to do. It had always been my goal and my dream to work on cars and actually get paid for it. And so we were over the moon. Quit Pricewaterhouse and started working out of the garage. Had more work than I knew what to do with. Had a handful of transport companies dropping cars off from various places. But we were under the confines of an HOA. And me, in my younger, ignorant youth, 10 years ago, didn't really think much about it. Basically thought, screw the HOA, we'll do what we want. Until about a month and a half after we started, a month and a half after I'd quit Pricewaterhouse to do my own thing and be my own boss and be the entrepreneur that I always wanted to be, we get a certified letter from the HOA with pictures, affidavits, all kind of stuff, basically saying you can't do what you're doing where you're doing it, which was not good because I had quit my career. I had no income, and so we depended on me working to obviously to make ends meet. And now we're being faced with the stark reality of I have nowhere to work, and so that wasn't good, especially being young and dumb and just not really knowing how the world really worked. I wasn't sure what to do. And I talked to the wife about it. We thought about the idea of, going back to Price Waterhouse and said, hey, I made a mistake. Can I have my job back? And I vehemently opposed that idea. However, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And so we prayed about it, and it wasn't very much long later that I was at the track, not with the white car. The white car was totaled, but I loved the track. I loved racing, and so I was at the track. And a buddy of mine came up to me and said, "Hey, man," he said, "what are you doing with that white car?" I said, "Dude, I took everything out of it. I was like, it's just a shell now. It's just a mangled up shell." And he says, "Hey, man, he's like, I got a guy that might want to buy that from you." And again, when you see the pictures of how it was, I was like, who would want to buy this thing? It's a pile, And I was like, all right, cool. And so lo and behold, Mr. Edwin came in the picture, and met up with him and his son. He looked at the car, and we agreed on a price, and he bought it from me. And so come to find out, at the time, he had this 69 Mustang that he was trying to do a resto mod build on. And he wanted to do a coyote swap. And he also wanted to have a modern interior. And so he was actively looking for a donor car that he could transplant the interior, the dash, the seats, and the driveline effectively into a 69 Mustang. And that was 10 years ago. And so here we are in 2025. And we just finally, after a lot of delays and a lot of hiccups along the way, have the car in the dyno, and it just made right under 800 horsepower to the tire. And so that's a big deal. That's pretty exciting. But had that accident not happened, had the white car not been a total loss, I probably never would have met Mr. Edwin. And why is that a big deal? Well, we had just gotten the HOA letter saying you can no longer operate out of your residence. It's a violation. We got, we got letters from the lawyer and all this stuff. So my wife and I are freaking out about, what am I going to do? And I meet the guy at the track. He says, "Hey, I got a guy that might want to buy your car." I meet Mr. Edwin. We agree on the price, and we start talking, and we have a shared common coming together that we're both believers in Jesus Christ, and we start talking about God and religion and things like that. And lo and behold, he knows a guy named Sammy who is actively looking for a tenant in his warehouse space. And that's where Jordan Performance and Racing really took off. And so I talked with, I set up a meeting with the landlord, Sammy, talked with him, and me knowing what I had planned for the shop and the building, it's not usually a good conversation to say, "Hey, Mr. Landlord, yeah, I want to put a dyno in here, make a bunch of noise, make a bunch of make a bunch of racket, aggravate the neighbors, and all that." And so I kind of didn't really, I kind of tiptoed around the idea of what I had planned. And so I set the meeting up with Sammy. We go meet him, and I swear to goodness, the first thing he says is, "Hey man, you gonna put one of those dynos in here? I'd love to put my car in the dyno and see what kind of power it makes." And I was just blown away. I was like, the one thing I was worried about was the future growth of the business, and having the ability to buy a dyno, put a dyno at the shop and all that. And the first thing he says to me is, "Are we gonna do that?" And he'd love to have one. And so without that divine intervention, without meeting Mr. Edwin, who knew Sammy, and without the car accident, I wouldn't be sitting here today in our new facility in Orlando with almost 8,000 square feet, and the growth and the business success we've had would not have happened without this car. And so it's real special to me to finally get this car, oil pressure, fired up, running, sounds amazing. And all that's possible, by the goodness of grace and God, and good circumstances that unfold, which ultimately, was born out of a tragedy. And so that's kind of what I wanted to say. Sometimes we, you don't really see God's plan. You don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're not really sure what's going to happen, and we went from the highest of highs with the white car, and not to go too deep down what would you call it? Not too deep down the historical rabbit hole and talk about, what we did. But, I had that car for, a long time, raced it a bunch, a lot of pass at the track, there's a lot of history in that car. And so when we finally went 860 and broke the record, internet went crazy, memes were made about it, all kind of stuff, right? We were over the moon, we were stoked about what the car did and where it was able to lead us. And then bam, the car accident happens, car's a total loss, and here we are. And so out of that tragedy was born a amazing opportunity by means of meeting Mr. Edwin and his family. And so anytime you're discouraged or upset or worried about, what God has planned for you, you just got to remember He's got your back, and everything works together for those who love Him. And so that's what I wanted to say. We'll do some more video footage of this car. Unfortunately for the car, we're trying to make 1,000 horsepower. It's built for it, but the clutch decided to take the day off. So clutch is done. We're out of clutch at 800 horsepower. It's a beautiful problem to have. We're out of clutch at 800 horsepower to the tire. So be it. But yeah, that was my story. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching and listening. We appreciate any support and love you have for us, and we're going to keep doing this thing. And for now, we'll probably roll some B-roll footage, or I'll hand it over to my video editor and let her do her magic. But either way, thanks for watching, and God bless.